Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here, not only because ENISA is such a great meetup and one of the biggest meetups in terms of technology and cybersecurity, but also because this roundtable here that we are about to have is the result of a collective effort in putting forward dual use and defense. And that is a path that we really believe we need to be following. So as many of you might know, 2025 was a great year for INCIBE in terms of dual use, because this year, along with UPM, Universidad Politécnica de Madrid, we finally got named Spanish National Accelerator Site for the DIANA program. DIANA is the Defense Innovation Accelerator program by NATO. In the DIANA network, as you might know, there are about 17 accelerator sites in different countries of the Alliance. There are more than 180 test centers. And being part of the DIANA network means that during 2026, we will be collaborating in the acceleration of 150 technology and dual-use companies. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to the great panelists that we are going to have here today. So Carlos Pérez Pla, which is early stage investor at Plug and Play. Lara Santos, which is process engineering manager at Celestium. And Adam Painter, adoption manager at NATO DIANA. Give a round of applause for them. So, a lot of juicy topics to deal with, actually. We are really excited to be here. Let me just give you a brief introduction on who we're going to be speaking to today. So first, Carlos Pérez Pla is an early stage investor at Plug and Play, which is one of the DIANA network accelerators. Carlos is a venture capitalist with almost a decade of experience in the technology ecosystem, focused on early stage investment and enterprise and AI startups. Carlos has invested in over 20 early stage enterprise software and AI startups and supports 24 Fortune 1000 companies with their innovation strategy. That's a lot, Carlos. Next, we have Lara Santos. Lara Santos is production and process engineering manager at Celestium Technologies. She is an expert in battery technologies and a specialist in technology transfer between research and production, which is actually something really important that we are probably going to talk about. Celestium Technologies is a company that recently participated in the first DIANA call a few years back, developing dual-use batteries for civil and defense applications. And last but not least, we have Adam Painter. Adam is a commercial and adoption manager at NATO DIANA. As part of the management, Adam is focused on innovation, investment, and adoption for the defense market. He has a broad background, including Formula One, defense tech, venture building, and venture capital. So as you can see, we have many panelists from different perspectives, from the facilitators, from the investment side, and from the developers and technology innovators side. So my first question is going to be for Adam. In regards, from that facilitator's perspective, how are institutions such as, for instance, NATO, which is the one you clearly know about, facilitating the transfer and commercialization of dual-use technologies, for example, like harmonizing regulatory frameworks, for instance? How are they doing that?
Yeah, so thanks so much. Great to be here today. And obviously, it's great the fact that NATO DIANA has spread and moved into Spain. So it's great to kick that off and represent the organization here today. I think first off, just to give you a little bit of background on what NATO DIANA does, if you don't already know. So NATO DIANA is the defense accelerator for the North Atlantic. Effectively, we do a number of things. One is around understanding the capabilities that end users, governments in NATO need, and we start to bring those together and effectively understand what those are and then put calls out to nations. And effectively, we understand where the gaps are, and we try and fill those with exciting, innovative technologies, particularly in the dual-use space, but leaning towards the defense space. Effectively, from us, just to give you a bit of a sizing of how big we are, so As you know, we cover all 32 countries. We have 17 accelerator sites. Last year, we had 74 companies in our cohort. And this year, we're going to upscale to 150, and that starts in January. And effectively, we had over 3,600 applications from all NATO countries apply to our program. So you can understand the size and scale of what we're trying to do. We have 3 offices. One is based in London, one is in Tallinn, and one in Halifax in Canada. And effectively, to answer your question about facilitating the commercial adoption, there's a number of things that we do. So as I said, we try and understand the capability gaps that governments, end users need to be able to fill and meet the need of today. I think the other ones are around a couple of things we do from a framework perspective. So not only are we a traditional accelerator where we help companies go from where they are today to hopefully adoption, and adoption is our key word, so we try and get the companies into the hands of the end user as fast as possible. We do that through a number of different things. So we do that through a couple of frameworks that are very new to us, and how we try and get NATO to innovate, not only on the innovation side, but also on the policy side. So we've created a number of things. One of them is called a rapid adoption framework. And effectively, that allows our companies who have entered into our challenge program the ability to go out, understand, and learn, but then also, once we understand where capability is, we try and pair that with the nation. And that allows them not to go through competition. So as you know, there's a lot of governments run competitions for procurement. Effectively, because the companies have gone through that with us, we don't have to do that, and we go for a single source procurement option. So there's a number of different ways we're trying to do that, and effectively that is sort of one of our key things. Lastly, I just want to touch on our relationship with investment. So NATO itself doesn't necessarily have a vehicle for capital markets to engage with, and effectively Diana is bridging that gap. So effectively we're building an investment network effectively across 32 countries to help, firstly, our accelerator and our innovators, and secondly, to help change and speed up policy, and particularly where investors struggle is around that understanding what signals the market needs to be able to invest more in companies that might have innovative technologies. So we're really trying to demystify NATO.
Yeah, and actually you said a word which I think it's key, which is capability gaps. It's so key because a lot of companies, they come to us being like, hey, so I want to have the tag dual use on my technology. And it's not about the tag, it's about the capability gap that you are fulfilling, and it's about the needs that you are fulfilling for the final users. And we always try to make innovators really aware of the fact that, yeah, it's not the must. I think it's not the must on your technology, but the capability that you are developing and the problem that you are solving for the final user. Never lose sight of the final user. You also talk about how you are building the investment network, and that actually brings me to Carlos, because, well, from the investor's perspective and from the investor side, what would be need to be changed in terms of exit mechanisms or regulatory clarity or deal flow maturity for private equity to see the dual use space more as an opportunity, a systematic opportunity, rather than an exception and something kind of risky?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, first of all, thank you for inviting me to this amazing panel in front of this audience. I mean, when we investors talk internally about, how are we going to make money at the end of the day, it comes down to 2 main ways, right? So one is M&A, and the second one is IPOs. The IPO window is completely closed globally. We have seen a couple of IPOs this year, but it is actually closed for most of the companies. And then when we talk about M&A, we try to understand who are the potential buyers of the company that we are actually investing at, right? And here you have 3 different parties. One is private equity. You have like growth stage private equities that they buy early stage companies and they operate with the end goal of selling. Then you have big tech companies, so the Google, the Microsoft of the world. I believe these ones are completely busy with AI right now, so there hasn't been much activity besides that. And then you have and other kind of like large tech companies, right? So in the security sector, for example, you have the Palo Alto networks of the world that they are actually acquiring companies. But when we talk about dual tech technologies, there are not many acquirers right now, right? So what is actually missing is those later stage private equities buying early stage companies. People usually forget, but private equities and venture capital, we also have investors. So in order for a private equity to exist, we need all the LPs, we need public money, we need all the endowments and pension funds to also invest in these private equities, because I think the opportunity is massive, and we're starting to see not only in Spain, but also in Europe, new funds, but it's still very, very early. So we, as early stage investors, we are investing in this category, but if there are no exits in the next like 3 to 5 years, we are going to stop investing, right? Right now, most of the risk is coming from the public and private sector, but we haven't seen anything in the growth stage yet, or just like a few. So I think what is missing and what actually needs to change is more investment in growth stage private equity, because I don't think we will see the Googles of the world acquiring companies in the next like 3 to 5 years.
But do you think private equity is kind of scared of dual use and how to invest in them?
I mean, at the end of the day, private equity, you can divide it in two main categories. So one is early stage investments, and I think we are seeing new funds investing in early stage companies. We do invest in the space because we believe there is a massive opportunity, and we are seeing new funds. I think what is missing is the growth stage, and that is going to come if we see revenue numbers in these early stage companies. Mm-hmm. In order to see revenue numbers in these early stage companies, we need to see adoption. So we need to see commercial use, defense use of these type of technologies and these startups in order to be attractive for a growth stage private equities as well.
Makes sense.
And to close the entire loop of making money for the investors. If not, I don't think it's going to work.
Does make sense, yeah. And Lara, regarding the developer, or let's say the innovator's perspective, how do you balance the speed of business development, which is actually super fast, and we all know that, with the slower, well, let's say not the slower, the slowest procurement cycles or for the defense and government sectors? How do you do that in the case of your product?
Gracias por la pregunta y gracias por invitarnos como empresa que ha participado en el primer programa de Diana de la OTAN. Yo creo que equilibrar los ritmos entre el sector privado y entre el sector, en este caso de defensa, es uno de los mayores retos que tienen las empresas que tienen una tecnología de aplicación dual. Yo creo que la estrategia aquí es tener dos velocidades de desarrollo muy coordinadas, pero no dependientes entre sí. O sea, yo creo que la estrategia de cualquier empresa pequeña, hablo como una startup, de alta tecnología, aquí es encontrar nichos de mercado altamente eficientes. Y hablo de alta eficiencia refiriéndome pues, a que aporten un valor y una financiación a la empresa que al final, por un lado, permita seguir innovando, porque este es el componente que nos diferencia a las pequeñas empresas de nuestros competidores, y por otro lado, que dé esa estabilidad económica para adaptarse a los ciclos más largos que tiene el sector de defensa, ir acreditándose, ir certificándose, ir pasando las validaciones, por ejemplo, la validación electromagnética, que es terrible, lo comentábamos antes, y para ello hay que definir bien la planificación y contar con un equipo especializado en el corazón del producto. Además, yo creo que de este evento somos los únicos, la única empresa que habla desde el producto, porque sí que es verdad que el público es muy de ciber. Pero yo creo que hay que contar con un equipo especializado en el corazón del producto, y ya en la segunda fase de desarrollo del producto, donde tú especificas y modulas ese producto pues para unas regulaciones más o menos críticas, unas certificaciones o unos estándares de utilización completamente diferentes, como son en el sector privado y en el sector de defensa. ahí es donde esta fase implica inversiones diferentes, implica colaboradores diferentes, implica tareas de ingeniería diferentes. Yo creo que al final hay que crecer rápido en el sector civil para que te otorgue esa flexibilidad y esa agilidad para que todo tire otra vez de la rueda.
And so far, would you say that you are able to do that at Celestium? Are you achieving that goal of maintaining the equilibrio de ritmos, balancing rhythms effectively?
Estamos intentándolo. La verdad que las regulaciones son complicadas aquí en España, las cosas van muy lentas. Al final yo creo que la estrategia está en formar pues eso, un equipo dedicado a la base sólida de la tecnología y luego contar con unas personas, un equipo de personas especializadas en el sector al que te vas a dirigir. Además, estando aquí, yo creo que lo más importante de un producto hoy en día también es ir abrazados de esa digitalización y de ese mundo del dato y contar también con un equipo especializado en ciberseguridad, en inteligencia artificial, que ahora se utiliza para todo. Te permite, por un lado, pues, satisfacer la demanda tecnológica que tiene el mercado civil y, por otro lado, otorgar a tu producto pues, de una credibilidad, de una fiabilidad y de una integridad pues, que se requiere en el sector de defensa.
Yeah, and actually you mentioned something that is actually a problem for so many companies, which is they already have the civil market covered. They have the technology, it's already really good developed, but they don't have the defense area expertise. And that's such a hard transfer for innovators, because whenever they have that market covered, they have to jump to another market which is completely different, and they are lacking professionals or mentors or experts that can help them and guide them through that step. So that's something about dual use that a lot of companies are finding, which is the lack of knowledge in how to jump to that defense arena. I would like to now open a bit of an open debate for all of us. I am going to be posing some questions, and we can just share our visions about them. So, in the current landscape, what type of strategic alliances, like with integrators, with the primes, with the MODs, with the R&D centers, do you consider to be key to gain traction in the dual-use ecosystem? We can start by Adam.
Yeah, I mean, the easy answer is all of them, because that would be a perfect scenario. But I think trying to be pragmatic, I think the focus really should be on trying to gain access to end users. A lot of our startups in our program have accelerated the fastest once they understand what their use case is and being really specific about it. It does change a lot from the commercial use case. So effectively, once you understand what that use case is, get it into the hands of the end user as fast as possible and iterate and test. A lot more MODs now are being very open and collaborative with access to end users than we've ever seen before. And this is partly, obviously, because of the Ukraine war, but also just because of the need to accelerate innovation. And I think focusing on that from our side is probably the key thing. And then second, particularly if you're a subsystem, you have subsystem products that need to be integrated into bigger sort of overall products. You know, we're talking ships, planes, things that move. Effectively, trying to understand where your system might sit and how best to try and integrate that on current or future existing platforms is something to really understand. But I couldn't stress the end user question is a big one, and you should really focus on that as an end user.
Yeah, and we are at Intibe, we are a government agency. We are not an MOD, obviously, part of the MOD. But the thing is that as a public institution, we really have, and especially the MODs, we really have to be there for the innovators. Like, the ecosystem cannot grow and cannot develop if we just keep on having exactly the same contracts in the same way and putting the same barriers to innovations that might be key innovations or might not. but we have to open that door as public administrations. We really have to open that door to innovators to make sure that we are achievable, that we are there, and that we let them know what needs do we have. As that would be said from the public administration area. What do you think about that in terms of investment?
Yeah, I mean, something unique that we do at Plug and Play as well is connecting large corporates with a startup. So for the past 15 years, we have been mostly working with private companies. Majority of the Fortune 1000 companies, so it includes companies like John Deere, US Bank, Entity Data, and we basically connect them to startups. And it works in two different ways. One is a reactive way, and that's basically when the corporate come to us with specific problems. So we identify the best companies and we introduce them to them. And there is also a proactive way. Because the corporates also come to us saying that they don't know what they don't know, right? So we basically twice a year, we put together a top list of companies, we send it over to the corporates and they can choose the startups they want to meet. So that's kind of like the traditional plug and play ecosystem. Something new that we are doing and that we have started doing actually 2 years ago is we included public entities as well and universities. We believe that the collaboration between universities, public entities, which is basically government, and private companies is going to be key and critical for the implementation of dual use of technology. So I think what we are doing in Turin, we are doing that with the Diana program. We have already accelerated 18 startups so far, and they also have access to the private side of the ecosystem, right? So having access to that end users that you were also talking about. We are doing the same in the US. So in Texas, it was announced a couple of months ago, we are working with the Department of Defense, Texas NMN, which is one of the largest universities in Texas, and the idea is basically to help the university incubate startups, have access to the Department of Defense, and also having access to all the private ecosystem as well. So we believe that there needs to be collaboration of all the entities in order to have like real adoption of this type of technologies. It happens in any vertical or any industry, but I think in this one specific, I think it's the only way to go.
Yeah, and that's actually, well, regarding that specific accelerator focused on defense, that's also a must that we have to take into account the fact that we are not developing an ecosystem with enough specifically meant accelerators in terms of defense that really know how to work with defense. We really have to work on that also in general as a whole. And Lara, what would be your intake on that, on the fact that in the current landscape we need all those alliances, and how are we working with them, and what would need to be changed with those alliances or improved in order to be better or develop the ecosystem?
Bueno, pues desde el punto de vista de una startup, estoy muy de acuerdo con mi compañero Carlos. Al final, lo que tenemos que intentar buscar es la colaboración entre todos los centros, entre el gobierno, entre centros de investigación pública, entre centros tecnológicos que quizá están más encargados en hacer esa transferencia de la innovación a llevarla a la empresa, y entre los propios centros privados. Al final, yo creo que lo que necesitamos las empresas pequeñas, pues para terminar de validar esa tecnología, para salir al mercado pronto y que no se demore mucho y tomar ese papel como early adopter que le hace falta a muchas entidades, es al final llegar a un acuerdo con las entidades públicas en relación a las validaciones. En mi punto de vista, lo que nos estamos encontrando y lo que está frenando un poco todo ese desarrollo en la parte dual de defensa es que para llevar a cabo esas validaciones de producto, montar un prototipo en un entorno real, donde sí que tienen interés en validar y en probar esta tecnología que ofrecemos las empresas innovadoras, al final eso está regulado por unas normas que tardan y se demoran muchísimo en el tiempo y no puedes montar tu prototipo o tu prototipo de validación en el entorno real, que al final va a acelerar tu salida a mercado, porque existe una regulación y no te dejan probarlo hasta que no se apruebe esa regulación.
And that's an interesting debate, the one about validations, and I would like to ask all of you from your perspective. Obviously, your perspective is clear from the innovator side, but how are validations a barrier? Because we need them. Like, we need them and in really specific terms, but how are they a barrier for you to invest, to make sure that they have these validations completed, or for you as a facilitator to make sure that they go ahead with those validations, and how can we make that barrier shorter, or at least make it not disappear, but help to fix the barrier that means for innovators? Adam?
Yeah, no, I think there's a few things that I suppose we are trying to fix some of these with real-life solutions. So effectively, a lot of what we do is not only run the accelerator, but we also try and help the adoption side. So we have a large group of people, military people serving, that help us support our startups and try and cut through some of the barriers to entry. One of the key things that we focus on is around operational exercises. So in our accelerator, and some of these are access to other startups in the ecosystem, is we've basically consolidated all of NATO's operational exercises across the alliance. And next year, Diana will be supporting 16 of these. One of them just happened in Portugal called REPMUS, which was a big naval operational exercise. And effectively, we bring together startups, we put them in real-life scenarios, we put them on ships, we put them on drones, we integrate their technology into the command and control structures. And it's an opportunity for these startups to effectively test, validate, and potentially fail, and come back and try again in a real-life scenario. So that's one of the things we're doing. And effectively, this is something that we will be doing more of, and trying to really break down the barriers. Just the point on that some of the startups have big challenges with gaining access to these, predominantly because it takes such an effort in time and cost to integrate yourself into these. So there is a lot of effort to try and reduce that barrier within NATO to ultimately become an easier thing for small startups to try and integrate into.
Yeah, and actually about that, many startups after the Diana program, some of them were telling us that, well, and you guys, that one of the most interesting things about the program is not the funding, is actually the doors that the program opens in terms of being able to have an OPEX, in terms of being able to reach the defense ecosystem. So that's something really valuable about the program, and I think you guys are doing a great job in that sense, because it's actually working for innovators. And in the case of investment, how are the validations being kind of a barrier for you?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on who you ask. I mean, for us, and I think there is a big difference between the US and European investors in terms of like validation. Like in the US, we love to invest as early as possible. We don't need like any validation. Like honestly, it's an investment in the founder. Like that's it. Like we need to believe that the founder is gonna be able to build the product, to navigate all the regulation environment, and it's gonna basically take it to the market. Like that's the only validation. Like they believe that the founder is gonna be able to do that. I believe in the European venture capital ecosystem, it's still not real. Like when I talk with some of my peers in Spain, they actually ask like for P&L, they want to see all the profit and loss, balance sheet. I'm like, you don't need that for an early stage company. Like you don't need them to have like revenue as of today. You just need to believe that they are gonna have revenue in the next like 10 years and that they're gonna be able to make money. So for us in the US, I mean, validation is mostly like founders, and it's gut feeling, honestly. But yeah, I would say that the biggest barrier is the regulation environment. I think it could be like a make it or break it event for any startup. Like, and I think we have seen that with GDPR and data protection. Like we saw new companies coming up of that regulation. We invested in a company called Big ID, security company, and they're $1 billion company today thanks to GDPR, but we have also seen many companies struggle to get into the European market because of GDPR. So I will say a lot of regulations could have like a negative impact in innovation, so we need to be very careful on how to navigate that environment. And I think that's the biggest barrier and the biggest question for us, rather than anything else.
So do you think that it would be better for us in Europe to kind of copy the investment style of the US, or do you think that would not be possible because we are kind of structured in different terms?
I think it will be amazing. I think at the end of the day, founders is what matter the most. People don't realize that the majority of the companies, they pivot in the first like 2 to 3 years and they end up doing something else. Like if you look at the data, most of the unicorns today, they are starting doing something else. So we need to look at the founder's capability to build something big regardless of the industry. And I think that's what matters the most. The people building the company. I don't think what they are doing today is what they are going to end up doing. So I think that's one of the things that the US is doing better than the European market in terms of like venture capital. They are throwing away a lot of money as well.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And that starting doing something else is something that really applies to dual use. A lot of companies are actually discovering as they go that they have a dual use. So yeah, we are finding a lot of that. Okay, so now I would like to ask each of you to take up 2 minutes before we leave to give an advice to an innovator. Let's imagine that here are tons of innovators that really don't know, they are approaching dual use, they think they might have something, they don't really know where to start, they don't really know if they are actually going to be able to get into the defense market. So what would be your advice in 2 minutes max? Adam?
Yeah, I think first off, it's really simple. You just go find someone in a uniform somewhere and start speaking to them. I think that's relatively easy in practice, but in principle is sometimes can be a different experience. I think for me also, I'd focus a lot on really trying to understand what, as Carlos said, around your team and structure, and where you can better maybe augment that, particularly with people that have had experience in that sector, and then obviously focus a lot on trying to fail fast. I know it's something that's obviously being said quite a lot, but I think particularly in the defense market, testing and validating your technology, that's really what really matters, and a lot of MODs really look for tried and tested solutions that have been developed within the battlefield, for instance, or that have come from the commercial space and that have got very good traction. So effectively, that's what I would say from a top down, and also apply to Diana. So that's just being selfish.
Go find people in uniforms.
Yeah.
Lara?
Bueno, yo voy a hacer un poco de promoción del programa Diana de la OTAN, que sé que este año sois aceleradora aquí en España. Al final, yo animo a la gente que crea que su producto tiene una aplicabilidad dentro del sector de defensa, aparte del civil, porque allí nosotros aprendimos a cómo movernos en el sector de defensa, cómo son esas regulaciones, qué etapas tenemos que pasar. Nos dio una visibilidad enorme en el sector y además que estaba muy bien organizado porque hay mucha gente de muchos productos muy diferentes. Entonces es un programa en el que podemos caber y hay muchos nichos de mercado y bueno, básicamente animaros a que os presentéis, y que a la hora de desarrollar el producto, pues lo importante no es crecer más rápido en esto de la utilización dual, sino crecer con un propósito que te acerque a los sectores donde quieres entrar.
Yeah. And
I'm going to switch to Spanish for this one.
Go ahead.
because of the audience mostly. Pero diría que principalmente son dos cosas. Una es creer en vosotros mismos, o sea, creo que es algo que falta mucho en España y creo que a veces pecamos y no nos lo creemos lo suficientes. Creo que en Estados Unidos eso lo hacen muy bien. Si tú vas ahí es todo enorme, todo lo hacen muchísimo más grande y no significa que sea mejor. Creo que aquí falta un poco de creérnoslo más y básicamente como esa cultura de que se puede hacer algo grande, ¿no? Eso es uno de los consejos que le doy a todas las empresas que vienen a Estados Unidos y vienen a las oficinas. Y dos, creo que otra de las cosas que falla aquí es moverse rápido y fallar rápido. O sea, en Estados Unidos también son muy buenos en eso. En cuanto hay un problema, se olvidan de él y se ponen a ejecutar lo siguiente. Aquí creo que nos movemos un poco más lento, nos quedamos analizando qué es lo que ha pasado y todo el mundo falla en el camino, no hay ejecución perfecta y no hay que obsesionarse con los fallos, sino hay que olvidarse de él y ir a por lo siguiente. Y creo que eso es un poco los consejos que les doy. Creer en vosotros mismos y moveros rápido, que no pasa nada por fallar y que al final todo llega.
Yeah, in general terms, in Europe, we are really scared of failing. Like of trying in OPEX or validation or any type of test.
Yeah.
We are really scared. What am I going to do if my product doesn't succeed? Go find the problem, go find the solution, fix it, keep on working. And we don't really have that culture in general in Europe. We don't really have that go for it culture in terms of don't stress about what's wrong, just keep on looking for solutions. And I'm like Diana as a program is also trying to kind of fix that for innovators, being like, just go there and try it and ask for it and ask and find important people that is going to, not important, but find the right people to make your product better, find the right people to ask.
Yeah.
So that's what we are taking home. I really hope that this was an interesting roundtable for all of you. And in case you are a startup or you are an innovator, you have here these amazing people to ask about dual use. Don't miss the chance because they are not going to be any closer anytime soon. Ask them and put your product out there and try to reach as much funding and contacts and opportunities as you can, because that's what dual use is about. So thank you so much for being here today, all of you. And it was actually great to be here with all of you guys. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. So indeed, I'm Florian Pennings, the Associate Chief Cybersecurity Officer at ENISA, the European Cybersecurity Agency. And I first of all really want to thank INCIBE and the colleagues here for inviting us to the stage to talk a little bit about cybersecurity cooperation and coordination, as well as foresighting from the perspective of ENISA. European Cybersecurity Agency located and headquartered actually in Greece, but very active across all our 27 member states, our constituents as we often call them. In order to do that, I actually want to take you through a couple of wider reflections on coordination and cooperation from an EU level perspective, as well as a little bit on the strategy that we conduct, and then to conclude also with a little bit of foresighting per request also from the colleagues, to give you a little bit of an idea and a taste of what we as an agency predict for 2030 in terms of the threats. So, if we look at cybersecurity cooperation, for us being a cybersecurity agency, this is a challenge in itself. Yes, we've been around for quite some time. We have now a permanent mandate. We have a lot of new legislation at an EU level, the II, the Cyber Resilience Act, the Cyber Solidarity Act, etc., etc. So the ambition is high. But it also means that the more regulation you have, the more cooperation you need. And the more cooperation you need, the more coordination you need. So in order to take you a little bit through that, I want to give you a bit of perspectives from my end and allow me to explain a little bit on also who I am. I was hired back into the agency after having spent 5 years in a large cloud service provider, looking at many of these cybersecurity legislative topics and challenges from a private sector perspective, knowing that the essence of cooperation really is identifying common interests. It's quite simple. If we both, as parties or in a multi-party environment, feel this is the right way to go, then cooperation happens and coordination becomes easier. Prior to that, I worked for the National Cybersecurity Center in the Netherlands, and I also spent some time as a seconded national expert at ENISA, so I've seen it from different angles. And with that in mind, I really believe that the essence of cybersecurity these days is, of course, understanding your stakeholder field, of course, understanding the cybersecurity legislation that's out there, but trying to cooperate and to coordinate. Now, at an EU level, biggest challenge there is scalability and balancing that. And what do I mean with this? If you have to cooperate with the energy sector within the EU, and you're an agency like ourselves that has a strong responsibility when it comes down to, for example, sectoral cybersecurity legislation as defined in the NIS2 directive, we need to cooperate. And we need to cooperate with entities. We do not have that expertise in-house. We have 141 permanent staff members. By no way can we cover all of the energy sector representatives in the EU. And we don't even want that, and we shouldn't. So we need to be smart in how do we reach to the right stakeholders. How do we cooperate? How do we coordinate? That means that we need to talk to the right people. That means that we go out there at events like this, that we engage, that we identify, hey, who are the right groups that we can coordinate with? Is this, for example, trade associations? Are these sectoral groups? Is this special departments within certain national cybersecurity centers that we want to cooperate with? Incredibly important. And why do we do that? Because we also know very well that when it comes down to sectoral legislation that needs to be implemented in cybersecurity for critical infrastructure, many of those are in the hands of private sector and industry. And that means that both of us need to find each other in the right way. An example is ISACs, for example, where we do information sharing, and that's where scalability becomes a challenge. It really is. We'll never get this 100% right, but it's the constant effort that we support and we invest in. That brings me to another element, what I really want to emphasize when it comes down to cooperation. That's really using the same taxonomy and also really fueling and investing in harmonization. Especially when it comes down to taxonomy in the EU, that's quite important. And I know, having worked on that private side, that for industry, it's incredibly important that throughout the digital single market of the EU, same language is being used when you want to implement legislation. Same approaches are being used, the same risk assessment, because it makes it easier. Now, this is exactly where we as an expert organization of ENISA are investing in. This is important for us, and we want to contribute to this. That also means that we also are actively and we're open for hearing those challenges from the different sectoral entities. Now, you heard me say already NIS2, but there's the other big legislation out there. It's a Cyber Resilience Act. The details of the implementation will still follow. It's the same challenge in essence. This really is where industry players are going to be impacted and affected, and we want to learn also from those. So that's why I'm really happy to be here at this event, because I know that it's that the level of private sector is very high in terms of participation. Now, then moving on to coordination. Frameworks. Beautiful European term, frameworks. Frameworks and strategies and policies. Well, essentially, we are part of that framework, and we want to be part of the framework, but what we always try to do, being ENISA, being rather small, actually too small, but I will always say that we're too small, we always need more resources. is to be very innovative and trying to find, okay, what model works best, what framework works best, and how do we identify those? That means, again, we need to engage with our stakeholders. And to that point, there are numerous frameworks and cooperation mechanisms throughout the EU that we use and that we connect to, that we invest to. Some are statutory and legal that we have to connect to, but some are not statutory or legal and are set up by us or we're invited to participate. For example, you see that I have one other badge below here, the National Cybersecurity Competence Centers. Are meeting today and tomorrow here in the beautiful city of Lyon. We are there also because we have a statutory role, but I'm mainly there to understand, okay, what are the current challenges and what are the opportunities and what are the solutions being discussed at an EU level to identify, hey, this might be something for us to invest in for 2026, 2027, because it's also about foresighting. I'll get to that in a second. CSERT networks, Cyclone, the NCSCs, the NIS Cooperation Group. We have many cooperation mechanisms in the EU. And hoping that I'm talking to private sector industry representatives, get familiar with it and also get involved. Understand these processes because many of the investments made there and the discussions are taking place on that side of the fence are super interesting for you as well. And we see it as an expert organization. It's a beautiful part. ENISA, cybersecurity agency of the EU, but we're essentially an expert organization. We bring communities together because, again, as I said, 140, we can't do it all ourselves. Then allow me to say one last point about that coordination. What we've often heard, and I've been in this field now for close to 20 years and have had the opportunity to see it in different angles, from operational to tactical to strategic. Many of us, including myself, are sometimes mixing this up, and that's okay. What I consider to be operational is maybe not considered to be operational in another part of the EU. But how do we uncover and reveal that? By having conversations and identifying this. And there you can see that, for example, cooperation within a CSERT network is very operational. Agree on this. Agree on what you identify and how you cooperate with each other. On the strategic level, within the EU, and again, our domain is the EU, I have to admit that there we do have investments and we do have frameworks, but we could do a little bit more there too. Again, the difficulty there is scalability. If you, for example, want to cooperate on a strategic level within the EU, how do you do that? Do you do that with the largest companies? Do you do that with representation of certain regions, certain countries? This has not yet been solved, but I think these are the questions we need to ask ourselves, because one of the things that we as an agency really emphasize is, yes, we are there mainly to support the EU member states and to support the agencies. We know that the industry is not to be forgotten in any of these discussions. Then allow me to go towards a little bit of scalability and inclusivity. The biggest challenge that we have within the European Union environment really is that we need to make sure that these two connect. So scalability, I explained. How do we get to the right companies, the right representatives? But how are we still inclusive? In the way the right sectors that are under threat or the right products that we see vulnerabilities appear are included. This is a constant investment. That means that we constantly have to update our products, we constantly have to update our services, we constantly have to have the right information levels flowing. So constant investment from our side. Now, how do we do this? So within the agency, we recently, at the end of 24, adopted a new strategy. It's the ENISA strategy covers from 2024 up to 2028. And what we really do in that strategy is we identify our horizontal objectives and our vertical objectives. What's incredibly important, and I'm really proud and really happy with that, as you hear, I really are all about, for me it's all about stakeholder engagement, but smart stakeholder engagement. But we see in the blue part, empowering communities. This is incredibly important for us because we understand, being small as we are, we need to put the right connections out there. Otherwise, we aren't able to get the right information in and to understand what's really out there on the threat as well as on the risk field. Then, and I'll talk to this about this in a second, foresighting. Foresighting is an activity that we started to deploy back in 2021, 2022. And much of the foresight analysis and discussion, and I'll give you in the next slides what our top 10 is, really comes from those conversations with experts and the Delphi process and all kinds of methodologies behind that to make sure that we are able to really put down, hey, these are the 9 or the 10 threats that we see for 2030. That's based on conversations with experts. Super important to say, we're the first ones to admit we don't know it all. Yes, we're experts, but we're actually really good in identifying, hey, what kind of expertise do we need to incorporate in our own systems, in our own processes to identify, okay, this is very, very relevant for us. Then shared cybersecurity knowledge across Europe. Now, this is a very open one, but obviously, being the cybersecurity agency in the EU, we need to make sure that that knowledge is there. We do that via reporting. We do it via other kinds of products. We do it by being present in the relevant corporation magazines, like the C-Cert network. Okay, somebody disagrees there. And then the vertical objectives. So this is really where we are looking at cybersecurity policy implementation. Preparedness. Preparedness is something that I will admit in the first months being back at ENISA, because I was there before as a second national expert, back up until 2019, then left for my private adventure. I didn't quite get it. And I think this is also one of the challenges that we need to accept to explain better to industry players what is preparedness. So the preparedness here is really about how is the EU system as a whole prepared for cybersecurity incident and crisis. So discussions around the blueprint, for example, you might have heard of this. If you haven't, have a look at this. Quite relevant because it puts down a process and a framework on how the EU actually deals with cyber crisis and communication and information flows. And that's quite relevant also to get perspectives from industry players on. And then, of course, cybersecurity capacity and building trust in secure digital solutions. I want to pause on the last one and take you through this. This, for us, is a rather new topic. This means not only the cybersecurity certification, but it also means ENISA's role in standards and also ENISA's future role when it comes down to the cybersecurity of products, which is the Cyber Resilience Act. The Cyber Resilience mentioned by many as being the new GDPR for cybersecurity. Very relevant, and we really want to invest in this. So if we then look at the empowering communities at our core, as I said in the blue in the other slide on the ENISA strategy, you would see cybersecurity cooperation is about the empowering of our communities, and our communities are large, wide, extensive across the 27 EU member states, and even sometimes beyond. So there are a couple of things that we are really doing here. On the one hand, yes, we engage a lot. So our engagement with the industry basically is connected via events. We organize a lot of events, we organize a lot of workshops, we organize a lot of public consultations, we have an advisory group, and we also have a managed security services certification at our working group being set up. All these things are there for us to make sure we connect to the right people, we understand what's important, but we also get that expertise in-house. Out of this, then on the right side of the screen you see all the reports we publish. Now those reports that were published, and I'm really proud of our colleagues there. They used to be very lengthy. We're making them a bit shorter now, including executive summaries. Please take note of these. Read these if you'd like, and also give us some feedback, because by feedback we'll get better at the process ourselves. Then allow me to conclude with the last slide here, and this is really about our foresighting of the threat. I was also asked to talk a little bit about this. Now, as you've heard me say, cooperation, coordination, connecting to the right stakeholders, all of that we do for multiple purposes and multiple objectives. Now, one of the main things for us is to understand what's actually happening in 2030 and what's also the direction of travel that we need to undertake. Now, why is this so important? Because in the EU system, I'm not going to bore you with this, but being an agency, we are succumbed to certain processes. That means that every year we make a work plan for the next year and for the next year. And that actually goes over 3 years. So we need to do foresighting in order to put things down in our work program and our multi-annual work program that takes over 3 years. You being cybersecurity experts, I assume, this is quite difficult. Because how do we know now what we need to do in 2 or 3 years' time? Still, we do it. And to that purpose, we really focus on these kinds of products. This is the reflection of an updated version that we published, I think, in the spring of 2024, 25. And we keep on doing this. It's incredibly important for us. Now, just to take you through, because you had some time to read this already, what's incredibly important here to see that supply chain remains very high as a number for us as really a top threat for 2030. But we added there because we saw a skills shortage, which is not necessarily a technical topic, but we see that in especially the last years, it has become quite difficult to find the right people for the right jobs. Now, behind this skills shortage, you just see 2 words. There's a whole project and a whole engagement behind there, what we call the European Cybersecurity Skills Framework. There's also the European Cybersecurity Skills Academy. There's a lot of investment in this topic. However, it basically boils down to the fact that we identify, both on the industry side, because I know it from my time being on the industry side, as well as from the public side, we need more people that understand cybersecurity skills. But it doesn't necessarily mean we need more people that understand the technical side of it. It also means we need people that understand the policy, the law, maybe even the psychological aspects of cybersecurity. So this is something that I really wanted to mark out, and I kindly invite you to support us in this effort. Then the second I would like to point out is the abuse of AI. So one of the key projects and the publications ENISA is fortunate to bring out is European Threat Landscape. We recently published our 2025 version that looks back at around 5,000 incidents, and we identify those and we analyze those. And one of the conclusions there was that when it comes down to phishing, we really saw and we identified that around 80% of those phishing activities are AI powered and fueled. That means that we now really see, and we have the data, that this is something that we need to look into. Quite interesting here as well, if you look at the 10th, it's also interesting, yeah? The physical impact of natural and environmental disruptions on critical digital infrastructure. We have the data, we added this because we see this. And this is something that we also want to identify. Now, the basis of these, of what you see here, you can read this in our reports, and you can read this also in our publications. I would mainly invite you, because this is one of our most downloaded reports. We know this, it's the European Threat Landscape. Please have a look at that. And again, I really invite all of you to, when you have had a chance and you have reflections or you have comments or you have suggestions, to reach out to us via the contact details on the website and let us hear your feedback, because we are constantly trying to improve and make this better. So thank you very much. That was it from my side.